Hi there, this is Anne McKinnell, and today I would like to show you how I like to use Lightroom, Aurora HDR, and Luminar in a workflow together. And I'm going to use this photo that I made at the Hunterian Art Museum at the University of Glasgow in Scotland. So as you can see, this photo has a significant amount of distortion to it because of the wide-angle lens that I was using when I made this image. So what I would like to show you first is why I like to correct this kind of distortion in Lightroom rather than in Aurora. Aurora does have a transform tool that is new to the latest release of Aurora. Let's just look at it first and I'll show you why I prefer to do it the other way. Okay, so I'm going to select these three photos in Lightroom. They are different exposures so that I can have one exposure that's good for the highlights, one for the midtones, and then this one is good for the, this is the one that's good for the highlights. And the other thing I want to point out here is that there's this doorway in the background here and people were coming and going. So I have a little bit of ghosting. In this image you can see a little blur here where somebody was there. And in this one it's not a blur, but there's a person there. And in this one there's a blur again. So I'm going to want to use the ghosting feature in Aurora HDR and select this middle image so that I get something clear in the background there. Okay. So I'm going to select these three images and I'm going to go File, Export with Preset, and I'll go Open Original Images in Aurora HDR. Alright, so here they are. And I'm just going to look in these settings first. And I do have the ghost reduction turned on. And I just want to make sure that it's the middle exposure that's selected there. And I have color denoise and chromatic aberration removal checked. So I'm just going to go Create HDR. Alright, so here's the image open in Aurora, and the first thing I want to do is use this transform tool here to try to straighten out some of these lines. So I will use the vertical slider and just try to eyeball it here until those lines look straight. That looks pretty good, I think. And I can use the Y offset slider to bring this down. So I'm, getting as much of the original image in the frame as I can. I'll just bring that down a little bit there. Okay. And now what I'll do is use the crop tool. I'll just click Apply first. And then I'll go Tools, use the crop tool. And I'm going to bring this in a little bit here and bring this in a little bit here. Okay, I'll try to make it so that this pillar is in the middle. Since it's so close to being in the middle, we might as well make it symmetrical. Alright, and I'll go crop. And good, now I'll go apply. Normally I wouldn't be finished the HDR at this point, but right now I just want to talk to you about the transform tool. Okay, so here is the one that we just did in Aurora HDR. So what I want to show you is I'm going to take one of these original images here and use the transform tool in Lightroom. So I'll go to the Develop module. Here's the transform tool, and I'll just pick Auto. Okay, so I'll use the crop tool again. And one thing I like about the crop tool in Lightroom is that if you click the O key, you get a whole bunch of different crop overlays. And one of them is this grid. So you can really tell using this grid that the lines are straight. That option isn't in Aurora. So that's what I'm really missing, is this option to be able to tell for sure that the lines are straight, and they are, because Lightroom's transform tool does a really good job. Just using this auto button, I don't have to eyeball it and guess. Just put that back the way I like it, and I'm going to, again, just like I did before, use this and just bring the crop in a little bit Try to make it so that the pillar is in the middle, and I'll go close. Okay, so now let's compare these two images. This is the one I did in Lightroom, and that's the one I did in Aurora. I'm just going to lighten the shadows a little bit here just so that you can see it better. Okay, just want you to be able to see the difference between these. So this is the Aurora, and this one is Lightroom. So you can see when I did the one in Aurora, I thought it was pretty good. I was just eyeballing it though. And when I compare it to the one I did in Lightroom, the Lightroom one is straighter. Now it's obvious to me that this one I did in Aurora doesn't have the straight lines that this one does. So for that reason, I prefer to use the transform tool in Lightroom before I bring the images into Aurora in the first place. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just go and delete this image that I made in Aurora. Delete from disk. And I'm going to go back to this in the develop module, and I'm just going to reset it and start over, okay? So again, I will go to the transform tool, and I'm going to pick auto. Then I'm going to go to the crop tool. I'm going to check it with the crop overlays and make sure that that indeed does look straight. Okay, and I'll just put the crop tool back the way I like it, and then I'm going to drag this in here, and I'll drag this in here, and I'm going to make it a little bit further so that pillar is exactly in the middle, and I'll go close. Okay, so now I want to make sure that these exact adjustments are made to the other two frames. So I'm going to go Settings, Copy Settings, and I want to make sure that the transform and the crop are selected here. Normally I don't have those selected if I'm going to be copying settings from one photo to another, but in this case I do want to have them set. So I'll go Copy, and then I'll go to the next image, and I'm going to go Settings, Paste Settings, boom, and to the third image, Settings, Paste Settings. Nothing happened. Settings, paste settings. Okay, there we go. Now again, I'll go select these three images, and now I'll take them into Aurora. So I'll go File, Export with Preset, and this time I don't want to open the original images because I've made changes to them in Lightroom. I want to use TIFF with Lightroom adjusters. Alright, so I'll select the tools here, make sure I have the ghost reduction turned on, and that the middle image is selected, and my chromatic aberration removal is checked, and then I'll just go Create HDR. Okay, so here we have it open in Aurora HDR, and we have a really good base image here to work with. You can see that this area that I was concerned about with the ghosting is not ghosted at all. It looks perfect. So in Aurora, I can use some presets if I want to, but I think I'm just going to turn those presets off. I'm just going to do my own thing here. So I'm going to just use these sliders and try to get as good of an HDR image here as I can. So let's try some HDR Enhance. Okay, that looks good. Smart tone, that can bring that up a little bit. I think I'll take the highlights down a little. Let's see, HDR structure. I like to add a little bit of microstructure when I have an image like this, and that'll really bring out the details in all of these bricks. So I'm going to add a little bit of HDR microstructure. All right. I'm going to add a little bit of HDR denoise. And that looks pretty good. Maybe I will add a little bit of detail boost as well. Now you don't have to go very far with these sliders, just slight adjustments make a really big difference. Okay, so I'm going to use this eyeball icon up here to look at the before and the after. So this looks pretty good to me. I think any other effects or anything that I want to make to this image I'm going to do in Luminar, because there are just different options available to you in Luminar. I use Aurora to get the best base HDR image that I can, and then I take it further in Luminar. So at this point I'm just going to go apply. Okay, so here it is in Lightroom, and let's just look at this full size. And I can compare that now to the lighter image that was the first exposure, the raw image, and this is the one as it came out of Aurora. So what I like to do is use my star ratings so that I know what stage I'm at in the processing. So as you can see, these first three images, the raw images that I used to make the HDR had 1 star. So now with this HDR image, I'm going to give it 2 stars. So I know it's just a little bit further along in the process. And now I'm going to go ahead and open this in Luminar. So I will go Photo, Edit in Luminar. Now I have a choice here. I can edit this original image, or I can edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments, or edit a copy. So what I'm going to do is edit a copy. Reason being that if I make some changes in Luminar and then later on I come back and I decide that I don't like them for some reason, I can always come back to the one I made in Aurora, the HDR image, and continue on from there. I don't want to have to start all over again making the HDR image. So I'm going to edit a copy of this one. And I'll click Edit. Okay, so now we are in Luminar, and we have a whole bunch of options here. Similar to Aurora, you can use some of the presets if you want, or you can just add filters on your own, whatever you want to do. So I kind of like to have a look through some of these presets and just see what they look like. I kind of have a vision in my mind of how I want this to end up. And what I want it to be is very contrasty with lots of highlights and shadows and a little bit desaturated, I think. So I'm just going to look through some of these. I don't want it to be too much, but I quite like the contrasty look in this Enigmatic Vision preset, and I like the colors here too. I don't really like the glowiness, so I think what I'm going to do is start with this preset and then just start making adjustments to it. So this glowiness comes from Orton Effect. It is kind of cool. I'm going to click this icon, the eyeball icon here, to turn it off and turn it back on again. You know what? I do kind of like that on. I think I'm going to leave that. But what I want to do though is make sure these highlights don't get too blown out because of this effect. So what I can do is add a layer mask to this Orton effect and just tone it down a bit in those areas. So I'm going to go here and click the brush icon. I'll click brush. I'm going to make sure that rather than paint, I've got it on erase. And then I can use the brush tool to remove it from these areas where I don't want it. So I am just going to reduce the size of my brush a little bit, and I'll reduce the size of that feather. Reduce it a little bit more. And I'm also going to turn the opacity down so I'm not just taking it all away immediately. I'll change it down to 50% and then I'll just start painting on here a little bit. And just kind of tone that down a little bit in these areas. Okay, I think that's better. Maybe a little bit more. I do want to be able to see these details back here, but just not have it quite so blown out. There we go. That's looking good. Okay. So I think this is looking pretty good. I do want to desaturate it just a little bit more for the final image that I want to create here. So I'm going to click Add Filters, and I'll just click this Saturation Vibrance, and I'm just going to turn down the vibrance a little bit. How's that? And I'll use the eyeball icon to turn that change off and on again. Oh, maybe a little bit more. Well, I'm going to try the saturation slider a little bit. There we go. All right, I think that's what I'm looking for there. I'll use the visibility icon again. See, it looks just a little bit too yellow to me here. And that looks like what I'm looking for now. So this visibility icon at the top turns the whole thing off, everything that we've done in Luminar. So I can click this and get back. I have to hold it down actually. This is the one that we made in Aurora. And then if I release it, it has the changes that I've made in Luminar. So this is before and after. Okay, excellent. I really like how this turned out actually. I am going to go ahead and click Done there, and then I'm going to click Apply. Alright, so here it is back in Lightroom. And again, because it's gone one step further in the editing process, I'm going to give this one 3 stars, so that when I come and look at these, it's really easy for me to tell them apart. Alright, so let's look at how this progressed. I'm just going to slide this one over here so I get them in order here. Alright, so this is the brightest of the raw files. This is the one that we made in Aurora HDR. And this is our final image as it came out of Luminar. Okay, thanks for watching my tutorial. Please subscribe to my channel to see more post-processing videos like this one. And also look in the description and you'll find a link to my blog post where there are more photos of these arches from the Hunterian Art Gallery. And also you'll find a coupon code for Luminar. Okay, thanks for watching. See you next time.